Okay, so sometimes I call these meetings to order and sometimes I don't, but I will today. This is the Willington Board of Education Policy Committee. We have three members here, Brianna Ross, Ann Grosjean, and Arthur Christensen. We do have other board members watching, but they are simply watching and they are muted and listening. So um, it is 4:06 p.m. on January 3rd, 2024. We only have really one item on the agenda today. It's the policy review for new policy 9160 student representatives. I wanted to start just because we have some new folks on this committee and talk about process. This is your first opportunity to really provide feedback on this draft policy and kind of wanted to share kind of how the process goes. So often before a policy gets to you, if I'm working on a draft of something, it's typically already been reviewed by the board attorney. Not always, it just depends on the policy. Um, Once you have a policy that is written to your satisfaction, you can then send that policy to the full board for approval. It may take you one meeting to to review a policy. It may take you five. And so once it's to you, the group's satisfaction, there's no votes. It's just to your satisfaction. You send it to the full board for approval. Um, and before the discussion with the full board, again, if there is something that, I'm want to make sure of as far as legality goes, making sure we're following state statute. If there's anything federal, which is not always the case, but sometimes there is, and just make sure if there's any new cases, I will then run it by the attorney again before it gets to that full board. So once a policy is before the full board, that's their first read. They typically won't approve a policy as their first presentation. Um, it's usually the next meeting or a meeting after that, unless they send something back. So that's kind of the process. I wanted to make sure that you all knew that process, and just it's meant to do the work here. The I did any questions about that before I move, Arthur? Anybody that's on?
No.
Okay, so I reviewed the policy from I got some wicked feedback here. I reviewed the policy from several other districts on this same topic for student representatives, and pulled together what I thought was the best parts. I shared it out with you. And Jen, if you want to listen, you're welcome to. Otherwise, that was my policy overview. But see ya. The idea here is that I'm going to pop it up on my screen. And if you have feedback on any of the pieces of it, it was meant to be a starting point for you. So let me put this up on the screen. Let me increase this because it will help. So this ends up falling now into your bylaws, okay? And so in that, and that's typical where this policy is found. We put it as 9106. I will confirm that's an appropriate spot with the attorney. We match it up to CABE policies. And so the idea here was that I believe the point of the student representatives is really to get an added dimension here in the decision-making process, to get feedback and hear from student representatives. I started writing this really with the perspective of having a student ambassador for the elementary school and then a student rep for the middle school. And I just changed it to all be student representatives and then kind of spelled out the roles below. This is obviously in a non-voting capacity, which obviously it should be. It's to get their opinions on things, to get their reports on what's going on in school, hopefully give them a more effective voice. And then this is the process and the guidelines that I put for kind of how it would go. So instead of making it very complicated, what I dare to say a bit of a popularity contest, I just put these in as that the individual student rep would be chosen by the middle school principal and the center school principal. Obviously, I'm going to share all this, and then you can pick it apart. Once they're chosen, they would be given an orientation on the process. I would be part of that. And it says, and an officer of the board. I believe that would be the chair. It could be the vice chair, however you want to do it. Honestly, it's if Brianna passed that along as chair, she could pass it to anyone she wants if she delegates that. The number 4 there, the idea is that they're attending the meetings. The center school representative would submit a written or recorded report instead of attending the meeting if they so choose. If they, was a student that their parents wanted them to be in person, that would be up to them. And they make the determination when they would want to leave. So that would just be a communication piece. We'd figure that one out. Again, non-voting capacity. I think it's good to have that in there a couple times. They can provide a brief update. It's in there. They may be invited to special meetings is in here. And that was something I saw in one of the policies. And the reason that special meeting is not depending on it's meant for this to be the regular meetings. But you may have a special meeting where you want their feedback on. And so they would get a special invitation to those as well. It doesn't mean they're going to give a report. It's more about feedback, I think, in that part. Number 7 was what their term of office was. Most districts that I saw do basically a September through June and didn't do the summer months. I think that's reasonable, but it's up to you if you wanted to adjust that. The idea is to have that person identified pretty early on so they could start in September. Obviously, I have a question there. What about the summer months? Number 8, that they basically are not part of executive session. They're not going to be part of any negotiation sessions or anything that's confidential. I will make sure that language in this line is really clear, connected to FOI, but also cleared by the board attorney to make sure it's accurate. I saw the same line in other policies, but I want to make sure that's there. And then the last line I think is a little bit of a protection for you, that you have the right to dismiss a representative and call for somebody new if someone's not attending. And I did see that it's affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board. That was in other policies. You could just say by affirmative vote. That's up to you. Majority vote. That's up to you. And so that is really the draft that's there. And I'll let you kind of pick apart if you want to open up any conversation of what your thoughts are, any thoughts on adjustments, things you like, things like that. And I can't see you, so.
My first question is, why are we picking just one representative from each school? I mean, was there a reasoning behind just picking one,
None.
or because
None.
what happens up at the high school is they have probably a pool of about 4 or so, and they get rotated every meeting. So it's not the same person providing the update every meeting, and they usually get a couple meetings off. And I was thinking that if we did the same thing here, you have a couple kids be, in quotes, rewarded by being able to present this, and that way, they could rotate out. If one of them can't make a meeting, someone else can sub in for them, that kind of thing.
Brianna or Ann. Oh, you know what? Ann probably can't speak. Hold on. Sorry. I think she's going to be muted. Sorry, Ann. I think Ann was locked out.
I was just going to say that having more than one would probably make it more comfortable for the representatives. Standing up on your own can be difficult as a grown-up, so probably is the same for our youngsters. But as Arthur said, they have their 4 that rotate through. I think it would be nice to have a bigger pool rather than sticking with the same 4. Like each time choose 3 more. And I think the criteria for it really, we had talked a little bit about that at one of our meetings. It's not always going to be our student council president. Sometimes it needs to be a student who needs something positive needs a little light shown upon them. So that might come and go. Might be hard to say early on who that's going to be.
So would you see, if you had, say you identified 4 per school, and I'm just throwing a number out there, would you, and I'm not, Arthur, were you saying one shows up each night, or because Brianna, were you just saying have a couple there? Would you max out and we rotate through? If we had 4, 2 would be on, 2 per month would show up, or are you saying all 4?
Yeah, so that's how it works now. In the pool. It's usually a pair of them that come to the high school to do the presentation, and like Brianna said, that might make them more comfortable if they're in a pair or there's a couple of them there. If you want to make the pool larger, and I'm not opposed to that at all, but I think just having one representative per school is not going to be enough for the purpose of this. What this is meant to be.
And also, like, depending on what's going on, I mean, you might have a musician who really wants to talk about the music program at some point, but not so much to say about like a math group or something. So Arthur, would you say again, 2 per school, you think?
No, it's 2 per meeting. So you could have a pool, like you could have a large pool of students who are eligible to do this, and a pair of them come to the meeting and do whatever presentation they want to do.
So 4 total. I'm sorry. It's like I
Yeah,
can't.
I think his point is
Yeah.
4 total, and then you
Gotcha.
just rotate those 2 together. You'd basically assign them months, right? So they'd come to 5 meetings basically. Um, and I'm saying 2 for center, 2 for hall at each meeting, right? That's your intent.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did try and just get you to unmute. I'm not sure why you can't because you're a co-host. Do you need me to share that on screen? Is that helpful, or can
I got it.
Arthur, do you need it on screen?
No, I have it right. I have it in a different tab. I'm just going back and forth.
Okay, so I can easily update that to say, do you want me to say it as a maximum of 4 representatives for each school? Is that
I
a
don't know if
number
you want to put a maximum on there. You could put a maximum of those who would present at a meeting, but I don't know if you want to put a maximum on the eligible students.
Okay. So do it this way. Okay. So I can adjust 1 and 2. Orientation. I'm assuming you're fine with 3, the orientation. Do you think you need the board officer? That was in some.
The only thing the board officer does is the board officer has the good layout on how the meetings run. So, I mean, unless Phil, you're going to provide that, which you obviously can. I mean, that's the only benefit I would say to having an officer there is that they know the flow of the meetings and can tell the kids, this is how it goes, and this is when you'll be chiming in and all this kind of stuff.
Because my thought is I could do an orientation during the school day at some point, just checking with those kiddos, have lunch with them, and then prior to the meeting, whoever the board official is could meet them before and just give them the extra layout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that'd work.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the center school representative may choose to submit a written or recorded report instead of attending the meeting?
I like it. Because then they don't have to stand up in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah, I'm good with that too, but I think you should leave that option open to
Absolutely.
Hall at some point as well.
Thinking that. So So if I just took out the student representatives may choose to submit a written or recorded report instead of attending the meeting, you're good with that? Take out the center school portion. That way, Hall School students could do the same if they wanted.
Yeah, I think so. Because Hall's got that nice area where you've got all the TV equipment and everything. What if the students wanted to, you know, make it almost like a news broadcast?
Yeah. All right. So I just took out center school, that one. And I saw your comments and said I would like for students to have the opportunity to speak about special events. So it could be rotating. Whoever has something special to report. It would be nice for all students to attend on Zoom or in person. I agree. I think it's a comfort thing. If there's, the idea is to make it as flexible as as possible. If they have a sporting event and they can't attend on a Tuesday night and they really want to be that rep, it still gives them the chance to provide some feedback. And if they know the agenda item coming up that they want to speak on, they easily could speak to something too if it was something beyond a special event. Okay. Non-voting, I think, is standard. Do you want them to, I mean, if we say they will provide a brief update, they have to provide an update. If we say the student representatives may provide a brief update, I know it's simple, nitpicky, but one is must and one is can.
Yeah, May.
What are your thoughts on summer?
I don't think it's necessary. I envision this as a thing where they discuss the goings on at the school, and if there's no school, I mean, there's not much for them to discuss.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, September to June is good.
And I'm on your comments. Yep, I agree. No summer, she just said. Okay, so let me take that out. It's now the school year. One school year. I'm gonna say September through June. Okay. And any thoughts on things that we should add that students should not be allowed to attend or receive information about? Obviously executive session, negotiation sessions. There was other districts had some various things in there. We put other confidential matters that do not fall under FOI, but there's a lot of things that do fall under FOI. Some people had they would write in here personnel matters. That would be an executive session item. I don't think that'd be something that we would, be having them weigh in on. Any other thoughts on that?
I mean, I would just envision it as all the representatives are privy to the same information that the public is privy to as far as our meetings go. I mean, wouldn't that be a pretty good catch-all for everything? Because, you know, general public can't attend executive session or doesn't have a speaking role in negotiations, which I don't know how you guys do negotiations, whether or not they're public meetings, but you know, I think that's a way to look at it.
So do you think the way it's written, it makes that clear? Because everything if it doesn't fall under FOI, it's executive session or it's confidential.
Yeah, so I think how it's written it's very legalese, but I think it's fine. I think it gets the point across.
And Chris will know if there's any holes in it.
Yeah, yeah. And thoughts, looking at your comments. Okay, perfect. And that last thing, number 9, the right to dismiss. That was in every single one I saw. What are your thoughts? Some people had really
Personally, I think it should
specific
be
things.
simple majority.
Simple majority.
That's what I think. Because we have a 7-person board, so 2/3 is it's basically a simple majority anyways.
I mean, honestly, I think if a board is going to be voting a student off of out of this position, it's going to be something significant. And I wasn't sure why the 2/3 that other districts had it. I copied it, but I couldn't come up with a reason why. Brianna or Ann, are you okay with just making that the majority
Yes,
by a
that's.
majority vote?
Mhm.
Okay. Any other items? Oh, and sorry, I just jumped to the document. You okay with that? If it is rotating for every would this be necessary? Yeah, and I think the point is, and you're writing yes, but I think the point is, even though it's rotating, if someone's not um showing up, if someone's just says, no, I changed my mind, I don't want to do it. I mean, they could resign, I guess they, quote unquote resign. We could put that in our policy, but we would just accept it. I don't know that you need to put something in there and we would just pick somebody new. I think in the event that you wanted to vote a student out who was not acting or representing the student body, then I think that whether it's rotating or not, you would want it in your policy. Any other items that you would want to put into the policy? Some of them are, 3 pages long with real specific details. I just don't know that you really need that. I think it's straight to the point. There's the application, the facilitation of the role. You want to make sure it's clear enough, and I think it is now. It says what they're doing, that they're providing an update, that they can provide feedback on items. I can do that as part of our training when I meet with students, and go from there. I think the way it's framed right now, a center school, you could have a kindergarten student that's really it's going to be selected by the principal. So it's not necessarily just going to be fourth grade at center and eighth grade at Hall.
Yeah, so Phil, on that note, since there's no specifics in the policy about how the principals choose the representatives, are we going to find out that information from the principals? Is there going to be like a standard way they choose, or is it just going to be up to their discretion?
So I think it's hard to frame it because I was trying to look at, and this is why people make it a vote. They had some districts had it out like the kids would actually campaign for these roles, and I worry about that a bit. I can see that more at a high school level. I'm not sure elementary and middle school that's appropriate. And then trying to frame out specific criteria, thinking about a rubric or something. I was worried about doing that too, and simply because I don't want to, knock anyone out of the running because they don't fit something. And some of this may be how we pitch it to kids that number one, you don't have to be a student representative. If you want to come and present to speak, you absolutely can do that if you just because you're not a student representative, if you're not identified as one. But a variety of students. So I'm just thinking middle school. You may get someone who is really music oriented. You may get someone who's really sports oriented. You may get someone who's very artistic oriented. You may get someone who's really academically driven. There's a variety of things. And I think, do we need to put check boxes next to that? I don't know that I want to do that. I'd rather trust my principals that they're going to identify a variety of students in an appropriate manner. I don't know. I don't really have thoughts on how to do that other than leaving it more gray.
No, I didn't think we needed very specific things to be checked off, but I think a general idea of what would be required to do this would be something I'd be interested in seeing, not necessarily in the policy, but at least from the principles of how, at least maybe how they're approaching their selections.
So let me ask you this. What if we wrote into the policy where we had the principals introduce their 4 candidates at the start of the year? And just, I mean, because you can say it right then and there. I'm, you know, I have selected John Mitchell. I've selected John Mitchell because, and you could share that information. That way people know why an individual was selected. Is that helping that?
It does, and I think that actually might be nice for the kids if you think about it. That their principal comes on to the meeting and says, I selected this person for this reason, because it's obviously not going to be a negative reason, so it's going to be something positive
Right.
that they can hear. I think that'd be nice.
Does that not solve the problem, or was it,
No, it's not a problem.
Right, right.
I'm just looking at it as what how I having them come in and introduce and say why they picked who they picked. That would and pretty much probably answer my questions. I don't,
Okay.
you know, I'm not trying to put anybody through the ringer. Don't get me wrong.
No, no, I
Just gotta
think it's a
cover the
good.
bases.
I think it's good for people to know it, because then someone's not going to question, well, I don't know why they were selected. I think it makes it pretty clear.
Yeah, I agree.
What I'm going to do is after I'm going to make a new after number 1, after number 2, I'm going to make a new number 3, and just I'll rephrase this here. Each school principal will introduce their student representatives at the September meeting, writing, I don't know, an overview, an introduction to the student.
Anne and I are confused. Are you trying to have the same 4 all year round?
I think if you're going to do a rep, yes. So you have 4 for center and 4 for hall, and two students, because those people are only going to see 5 meetings around that.
Right, but if your kindergarten's hatching chick eggs in May, I would want to see 4 kindergartners come and make a video or show us what they were doing in their kindergarten classrooms. But that's only that one time. If it's right before a concert or right after a concert, then it would be great to have some musicians come and keep it up or tell us what they really loved about it. If you just have for the whole year, that really limits the number of kids we get to make contact with.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it a lot harder for the principals to choose. If every month they have the option. The September one's the hardest one because they won't necessarily maybe have much to say, or they would have to prep them, I guess. I would rather not have 4 all year round. I think that limits it too much.
So they're not really a board rep then, though, Brianna. They're just they're just sharing what's going on in the school building. Like it's a one-shot deal. Different
Was the
purpose, I
rep
guess.
gonna take information from us back to a group of students?
No, I think it's the other way around. I think the idea is, and it could be that they're sharing information back. They could be sharing information back, but I think the idea is that the student body's voice is coming into the Board of Education through that student speaker. I think that was the intent of the policy, and that's the intent of the policies that I've read. If you're looking to do it on a regular basis where I would not call it a student representative, because they're sitting with you. The idea, if you are just looking for student presentations, I think that's something that we just build into our agenda. And that is where you would get the specific, like we were doing chicken eggs, or we were doing this, you know what I mean?
Okay.
That person could share that information. That student rep could share, hey, here are the cool things that were going on in our building right this month. it'd be the same two students. They would be sharing that information. I don't know. I'm not sure if that was what Arthur's thought was or what I saw in the other policies. So you guys, I guess we got to clarify the purpose of it.
Yeah. So my my vision was that you've got these students and they are representative of your school. So part of what they do is they reach out to the other areas of the school to get that information of any of the interesting things that were done or will be done in the coming months. So like the student reps at EO aren't necessarily all sports people, but they report on the sports teams and any of there's updates on the robotics after school program and what they
Right.
did, and they reach to all kinds of different corners of the school to bring that information, and it gets filtered through those particular kids. I didn't envision this as a grade by grade or event by event update and expanding it to a much larger pool of students. My concern with that is you're going to have the students see one meeting and it's going to be just a presentation style and they're going to present what they did and not anything else. Where I'm looking at this as these kids come in and they give us an overview of what happened or is happening for the month of their school as a whole.
Okay, got it. What so you are expecting them to report on what's happening there. Can they ask questions or bring about problems?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then do we treat it like present to speak where we can't say anything about it right then and there? How do you handle that?
So essentially yes, because you're more than likely not going to be able to give a complete answer at that time when the student makes the presentation or brings you. This is something that we've noticed among our student body, and it's this. Okay. So it's one of those things where you say, okay, thank you. Like we will look at the policy for that. Like if they have a problem, like I'm just going to throw out dress code. I know that there's no dress code problem, but let's just throw that out there. If they said, there's a lot of chatter amongst the students about this aspect of the dress code. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We can move dress code up in our policy meetings to look at it and address it there. And if they'd like to come to the policy meeting, if we have a present to speak section on the policy meeting, they could elaborate a bit more there, or we could do some kind of special meeting to elaborate with them there, as a special policy meeting where you invite students and hear about the issue there. Um, but as far as solving any issues right then and there, I don't think you can do that. But bringing them up is important because at least we know they're there.
Right. Yeah. I think they should feel like that's an option. Okay, sounds good.
You also need to make sure you give your administrators and myself a chance to solve the problem before you guys jump in, because otherwise. I don't think that takes with that understanding, Brianna, I don't think that takes out our ability to make sure, like, this is the training of it. So if we have a musical, we're going to make sure the student rep reports out on the musical. If there's other things that are going on that they want to share, hey, we're having a real big problem with our bathrooms. There's no reason they can't share that, right? And hopefully that's not a surprise to anybody. If there's an issue like that, because it shouldn't be, the administrator should know. Typically I would know. But I think that's the idea behind it, is that we can give them some voice, whether it's just reporting out on some of the good, or hey, here are some things that we'd like you to try and problem solve. So does that change your 4, Brianna and Anne? I mean, if you rotate, they're only seeing 5 meetings. Those 2 kids are coming to 5 meetings. Thereabouts.
Yeah, that's fine.
And are you thinking the same thing with that understanding now? I see your question in there. I'll get that in a second. Ann wrote, could we add an item to the agenda to hear about exciting news? I think it'll just say student representative report, representatives report. And so that'll be a section. I anticipate seeing that prior to my report, having that early on in the meeting, and then off we go. Any other thoughts on policy changes? Do you want some time to think it through? Do you want to, what are your thoughts?
Can you ask Lisa and Mary Kay about the number?
So I would recommend to them start with 4. That's what I would recommend. So it's a manageable number. Because the more, if you do a 6 or 8, it's 6 or 8 kids they have to connect with now. I'm adding quite a bit to that. I think 4 is somebody you can have lunch group with. And if you're doing it every month, you're having lunch with a couple kids, gathering some information, and off you go. I think that's manageable for them. I think they would feel the same way. I can definitely ask them their thoughts on that. And I think same thing for Lisa. Are you thinking more or less?
I was just thinking if I was the administrator, I'd try to pick like somebody for 5, 6 and somebody for 7, 8, but then I guess through those groups, they'll build rapport with each other and be able to work together to present. I was just thinking about the students' comfort level, but of course they probably won't take this position anyway if that's not something they want to do. So
Right. And it might be a student that's not interested in sitting in front of you. They might want to write a report and record it. That's on us. We'll figure out how to do that. We do want to have at least somebody in attendance, in person. I think that's the balance, but we can still give voice without the ability to, or comfort level to, be a phenomenal public speaker. I don't think that's, a requirement of this.
I just figured out my problem. I had not given permission for recording.
No.
So, you will review it with the administrators, the whole policy, right? Before we,
Yes.
yeah.
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 So if you're at a good point with this policy, I would take it. I don't think I have one bit of feedback in there about the multiple reps, so I would change that. I would basically send it back out to you, and if give you 48 hours if you are happy the way it is. I'd send it to the attorney and to probably to actually my administrators first, and get some feedback, and then send it off to the attorney. And I mean, it'd be tight. I mean, depending on how quickly you shouldn't have a lot to look at with this, because the changes are going to be minor. I mean, you could even consider putting this on your agenda on Tuesday if you wanted to as a first read. That'd be up to you.
I would like to try to do that because it is first read. It's not anything that's going to be voted on. So I'd like to try to get it out to the board for the January meeting. Because again, we could still make changes to it before it gets voted on, and that way we get other feedback from the other board members too.
You have a bunch of board meetings this month, even though they're workshops too. We have in prior years, if we had some sort of business that we wanted to handle, you could actually put an item like this at the front side of an agenda for a budget workshop. So if you wanted to try and set it up so your February meeting had a student rep in place, we probably could make that happen.
That sounds good.
yeah, let's go for that.
Okay, so I will, Arthur, you're good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I will, I'll turn this around. I'll make that minor adjustment on the number of representatives or that one piece. I'll get your final feedback. Just, if you're good with it, just shoot me a text back or email back, whatever works for you. And or any feedback on changes. And I will, I'll probably get that out tonight, to be honest with you. And then once you're done with that, I'll get it off to the administrators. We should be able to see that on Monday. And Brianna, we can make sure it's on the agenda for first read on, because this is going to take no time at all for our attorney to look at it. So, and she may be able to do it for us tonight. So, all right. So the last thing was on your agenda today. I put some future meeting agenda items on. If there's other policies that you want to try to address, I had some questions out. I'm going to ask Chris Chinney to look at a couple of our more sensitive policies to make sure they're up to date and current with all the changes in legislation over the years. Things I'm talking about are like harassment, bullying, things like that, that are constantly revolving. If she'll review our policy, and then if there's changes to that, I would bring them to you. The three that I put on here were things that have kind of been festering. One is the first one is the Narcan. That's something that I think we should put in place, so that our nurses have a policy in place so they have Narcan now, I believe. And they can just do it basically as a good Samaritan. But it would be a good practice for us to have a policy. The second was that our participation in board meetings. That's been a big topic of discussion about not being able to respond and trying to find an avenue. So that would be probably through policy. The attorney might have some things to say about that policy, but it's something that is on there. And then the use of private vehicles by school district employees on school business was another policy that had been festering, needs some to be wrapped up. So I can share those with you. Is there anything else that you want, or any priority of these, or any other policies that you want to jump to at a next meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. 5131.81 personally owned electronic mobile devices used in school. I mean, I think everybody knows that one was coming.
Yep.
That has to be looked at sooner rather than later. And there is a way of going about this policy that I envision, and that involves a survey or a poll going out to the teachers and getting their feedback on the disruption and their ideas on whether or not they would need cell phones or anything like that, and then trying to update the policy around their feedback.
Okay. Any others that you think are, let's get to right away as a priority for review?
Yeah. Yep. The 9325A, the public participation in board meetings. I know the first selectman has updated theirs to allow a bit more back and forth and a bit more freedom. I'd like to see us attempt to do the same, with obviously within reason, because it's still within reason in the selectmen's meetings. But I think that would go a long way with parents, to be honest with you, if we had a bit more give and take rather than just talk at us. The Narcan stuff, Phil, we just updated at EO. So
Okay.
I have the new policy for that if you want to, I think it's published, but I also have a physical copy if you want to see it.
Okay.
Um,
I'll look at EOS. If the
that's
date's not updated, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Anne or Brianna, any other thoughts from you?
Nope, sounds good.
So if we're super efficient, we should be able to get through some of these pretty quick. Thoughts on, I had on my schedule in my calendar as June 30th, 4 p.m. Am I making that up? Did that go, did that go to any of you, or did we just were marking dates? You're muted, Brianna.
June.
Did I say June? January, sorry. See, that was
Gracious, I'm like,
January. My apologies.
I don't remember having another policy meeting set up. So we're asking.
I
Yeah.
didn't see one come across either.
Just because January is you're going to be pretty busy with budget, I can send you some, the updated policies or the drafts of the things that we're talking about. But I don't see us meeting prior to closer to the end of budget stuff. So if you want to wait till February, that's up to you. If you want to, and I'm not talking about the student rep policy. I'm just talking about the others. Do you want me to just have Brenda try and schedule something and just work in an hour?
We did have, the 30th penciled in. I did have it penciled in, but we have a budget meeting the next night on the 31st, so
Yeah,
that might be kind of tight.
that's where it's like this month is hard just because you have already have you're gonna have 5 meetings already, I think. So it's up to you. Why don't I get these policies out to you then and maybe give you a month and I'll try and have Brenda schedule something early February. Does that work?
Yes.
Sir?
Yeah, the only other thing I might suggest to everybody here is if we're going to look at the cell phone policy or the personal electronic device policy, and if we're interested in getting teacher feedback, if anybody wants to, because I'm going to come up with a few questions that we could put on a poll, and that way we can compare them and come up with the best wording for the questions to send out. Again, that's just my idea as a good way of getting some live feedback as to how we should tailor the policy. But that might be something we could do and bring to the next meeting if you wanted to.
If you send me any questions you want to ask, I can also throw them in a Google Doc and just share it with the subcommittee, and that way you can just do it at your leisure, make comments on things. That would work.
Yeah, that works too.
Okay, any other items for future policies? We good? Also, no January 30th. I will have Brenda connect with you for your schedules for early February. Look out for an email for that, probably followed up by a text. That's how she tends to do business. And if there's nothing else, I will see you all in a couple of hours. And that is
Will we be on Zoom, Phil?
Nope,
on
tonight is
Zoom
in
again?
person. Tonight's in
In
person.
person tonight.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So it
Okay.
is 4:54. We'll adjourn at that point. I'll see you all in a couple of hours.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Phil.